Health insurance is one of those things almost everyone has, almost nobody understands, and almost every person gets wrong in at least one significant way. And the company you choose, the actual insurer, matters more than most people realize. Not because one logo is better than another, but because when something goes wrong, the difference between a good insurer and a bad one is not a minor inconvenience. It can be thousands of dollars, months of fighting, and a claim that gets denied when you need it at most. So let's talk about it honestly. The best and the worst health insurance companies in the U.S. right now, and more importantly, how to think about what puts a company in either category. Before getting into names, it's worth understanding what you're actually evaluating. There are 3 things that matter when judging a health insurer. First, do they actually pay claims? And do they pay them without a fight? Second, do they have a network broad enough to cover the doctors and hospitals you'd realistically use? Third, when something goes wrong, is customer service functional? Or is it a maze designed to exhaust you into giving up? Those 3 factors, claims payment, network quality, and service, are the real scorecard. Price matters too, but a cheap plan that denies claims is not cheap. It's expensive and useless. Now let's talk about what lands a company at the top. United Healthcare is the largest health insurer in the country by enrollment. Largest does not automatically mean best, but in this case, size does translate into network coverage that is genuinely hard to beat. If you're choosing a plan through an employer or a marketplace and you travel frequently, have a specialist you need access to, or live in a mid-size or rural area, United Healthcare's network breadth is a real advantage. Their claims process is not perfect, but their infrastructure is developed enough that straightforward claims move through reasonably well. The complaints that stack up around United Healthcare tend to involve prior authorization, the process where your doctor requests approval for a procedure and the insurer decides whether to cover it. That process has become a significant source of friction with large insurers broadly, and United Healthcare is no exception. Aetna, now owned by CVS Health, sits in a similar tier. Aetna has historically scored well on customer satisfaction benchmarks, and their integration with CVS pharmacy infrastructure has made certain aspects of plan management, prescription coverage in particular, more convenient than average. Their networks are competitive in most major metro areas. Where Aetna gets more complicated is in markets where they have a smaller footprint. Network quality drops noticeably in some regions, and if your preferred hospital or specialist is not in network, the out-of-pocket exposure can be significant. So Aetna is a strong choice in the right geography, and a mediocre one in the wrong one. Kaiser Permanente operates differently from most insurers on this list, and that difference is worth understanding. Kaiser is what's called an integrated system. They own the hospitals, employ the doctors, and run the insurance. You don't submit claims to a third party. Everything happens within the Kaiser network. For people who live within a Kaiser service area, this model produces some of the highest patient satisfaction scores in the industry. Coordination is better, paperwork is lower, and the care experience tends to be more seamless. The limitation is geographic. Kaiser operates in specific states: California, Colorado, Georgia, Hawaii, Maryland, Virginia, Oregon, Washington, and Washington, D.C. If you're not in those markets, Kaiser is simply not an option. And even within Kaiser markets, if you want flexibility to see providers outside the system, Kaiser is not the right fit. but within its model, it is genuinely one of the best-run health insurers in the country. Blue Cross Blue Shield is not a single company. This surprises a lot of people. It's a federation of independent regional insurers that operate under the same brand. So Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas is a completely different organization from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, which is a completely different organization from Anthem, which operates as Blue Cross Blue Shield in multiple states. The quality varies enormously depending on which plan in which state you're looking at. The reason BCBS tends to score well overall is that regional insurers have strong local networks, often the strongest in their markets, because they've been operating in those communities for decades. If you're buying insurance in a state where BCBS has a strong regional presence and the specific plan has solid customer service ratings, it can be an excellent choice. If you're buying a BCBS plan in a market where coverage is thinner, you may get a different experience entirely. The lesson with Blue Cross Blue Shield is to evaluate the specific regional plan, not the brand as a whole. Cigna scores well on behavioral health and mental health coverage, which has become increasingly important for a lot of people evaluating plans. They also tend to score competitively on international coverage options, which matters if you spend time abroad or have family outside the U.S. Their general network is solid, though like most large insurers, prior authorization friction is a documented complaint area. Now the other end of the list. Molina Healthcare and several other Medicaid-focused managed care organizations tend to generate significant complaint volume around claim denials, network adequacy, and customer service responsiveness. To be fair, these insurers primarily serve Medicaid populations, which means they're operating under state contracts with tight reimbursement rates, and that creates structural challenges. But if you're on a Medicaid managed care plan through one of these providers and you hit a claim dispute, the resolution process can be slow and difficult to navigate. Oscar Health is an interesting case. They've positioned themselves as the tech-forward, consumer-friendly insurer. The app experience is genuinely better than most traditional insurers, but their networks are limited in most markets, and their premium pricing in many areas has not translated into coverage depth that justifies the cost. They've been unprofitable for most of their existence as a public company, and that raises a question about long-term stability that is worth keeping in mind. Ambetter, which is the marketplace brand of Centene Corporation, consistently generates high complaint ratios in multiple states. A complaint ratio is the number of complaints filed with a state insurance regulator relative to the insurer's enrollment. High complaint ratios are one of the clearest signals available that claims handling and customer service are below average. Ambetter plans are often among the lowest priced options on the ACA marketplace, and that price can be tempting. But plan pricing and plan quality are not the same thing. A low premium with a high deductible, a narrow network, and a high complaint ratio is often more expensive in practice than a mid-range premium with a network that actually includes your doctors. This is where most people get tripped up. When comparing health insurance plans, the premium, the monthly cost, is the number people look at first. It should probably be the third or fourth number they look at. The first is the network. Does this plan include my doctor, my hospital, my specialist? If the answer is no, the premium is irrelevant because you'll be paying out-of-network rates or paying entirely out of pocket for the care you actually need. The second is the out-of-pocket maximum. This is the ceiling on what you can be required to pay in a given year for covered services. A lower out-of-pocket maximum means more financial protection if something serious happens. The third is the deductible structure and how it interacts with the premium. A high deductible plan with a lower premium can make sense if you're healthy. Don't use much care and have savings to cover the deductible if needed. It can be a poor choice if you have ongoing prescriptions, regular specialist visits, or a family member with predictable health needs. A more useful way to think about plan selection is this. Estimate what your actual healthcare usage looks like in a realistic year. Add up the cost of prescriptions, expected doctor visits, and any specialist care you anticipate. Then model out what each plan would cost you in total. Premium plus expected out-of-pocket, rather than just comparing premiums side by side. That calculation often changes which plan looks like the best value. One thing that surprises a lot of people is how much insurer quality varies by market. An insurer that performs well in one state can perform poorly in another because networks are built locally, claims are processed regionally, and the regulatory environment differs by state. This is why looking at your state insurance commissioner's complaint data is one of the most practical things you can do before choosing a plan. It's public information, and it tells you how many people filed formal complaints against a given insurer in your state, which is a far more useful signal than a national brand ranking. Prior authorization is worth understanding before you need it. Prior authorization is the process where your insurer requires approval before covering certain procedures, medications, or specialist referrals. Every major insurer uses it. The difference between better and worse insurers is how often they require it, how quickly they process requests, and how often they deny initial requests that end up getting approved on appeal. If you have a condition that requires ongoing specialist care or specific medications, asking about the prior authorization process before you enroll is not a paranoid question. It is a practical one. If you're choosing a plan right now and you want a framework that cuts through the noise, tell me your state, roughly how much health care you use in a typical year, and whether your plan is through an employer or the marketplace. From there, the decision becomes a lot more specific and a lot less overwhelming.